Welcome to Stone Stories with me, Paige Nestich. Are you feeling tired, stressed, paranoid? Maybe you're living your best life, but just need a little escape. Everyone loves a story, and everyone needs a break. Sit back. Let me take you on a gemological journey. And while we're at it, let's get stoned. What if I told you there is a gem that seems less like a stone and more like trapped weather? A gem that can flash lightning, wildfire, ocean water, and northern lights, all inside something you could hold in your hand. A stone so strange that ancient people believed it carried prophecy, and so beautiful that emperors treasured it above diamonds. So misunderstood that it was blamed for disease, ruin, bad luck. Gem people have worshipped, feared, faked, stolen, and obsessed over this gem. Today's story is about opal, a gemstone made largely of water, a jewel born in fire and pressure like diamonds, but through patience, chemistry, and silence. We'll explore what opal really is, how it forms, why it flashes in possible colors, and the myths, madness, and cultural legends that turned one of Earth's most magical stones into one of its most misunderstood. Because once you understand opal, you may never call it just a rock again. Most gemstones are crystals. Diamond is crystal, ruby is crystal, sapphire is crystal, the list goes on. They grow in orderly, repeating atomic structures. It is one of the most fascinating natural wonder of gemstones, where atoms arrange themselves in precise geometric order over long periods of time. This hidden internal symmetry is what gives many gems their sharp shapes, strengths, and unique optical properties. Opal doesn't do that. Opal is what scientists call a mineraloid, a naturally occurring gemstone-like material without a true crystal structure. So starting off the bat, it's already a little different, okay? And that's what makes it unusual. Chemically, opal is hydrated silica, which means it is made from silica, the same fundamental material found in quartz and sand, but with water trapped inside. Sometimes a surprising amount of water, often between 3 and 20%. So think about that. One of the world's most beloved gemstones contains quite a bit of liquid water. And unlike many gems formed deep underground under extreme pressure, opal often forms much closer to the surface. Water-rich, dissolved silica moves through cracks, cavities, ancient fossils, seams, and sediments. Then, over vast stretches of time, the water evaporates. Silica remains, layer by layer, particle by particle, until opal forms. Not through violence, through patience. That alone makes opal feel different. It's not forged in catastrophe. It is assembled slowly, like memory. Now for the reason people lose their minds over opal. Its color, or more accurately, its moving color. Opal can flash green, blue, orange, red, violet, gold, sometimes all at once. This effect is called play of color. And unlike ruby or sapphire, whose color comes largely from trace elements, opal's color comes from structure, that structure we referenced before. Tiny microscopic silica spheres inside precious opal can arrange in orderly patterns. And when light enters, it bends and diffracts through those structures, through those silica spheres. In gemology, diffract means that light bends, spreads, and separates into colors when it passes through or reflects off very tiny structures inside the gemstone. This happens when microscopic patterns interfere with light waves, creating rainbow effects or flashes of color. I have a hard time being able to visualize exactly how light is able to move through and bounce off the different angles inside a gemstone, but really at its foundation, that's exactly it. The light basically gets pushed into this hall of mirrors effect and then bounces off the different angles inside a gemstone. And then when it reflects out of the stone, that's when we see those different colors and the play of color, especially in an opal. Different sizes and spacing can also create different colors, meaning opal doesn't just have color, it creates color from light itself. In a sense, an opal is a natural optical machine. That's why no two opals look exactly alike. It's one of my favorite parts of the opal, their uniqueness. Move it slightly, and the stone changes. Turn it again, a new galaxy appears. Some look like firestorms, some like tropical water. Some, it's like broken stained glass. Others, thundercloud lit from within. And this is why people have become obsessed, because opal feels alive. When humans encounter something beautiful and difficult to explain, myths appear. The Romans adored opal. They called it a gem containing the beauty of all other gems. One Roman writer described opal as combining the fire of ruby, the green of emerald, the purple of amethyst, and the brilliance of diamond. To them, opal was not one gemstone. It was every gemstone at once. Romans associated with hope, purity, and love. In parts of Europe later on, opal became linked to prophecy and intuition. But why? Because the colors seemed to appear from nowhere. People assumed something so responsive to light must also be responsive to spirit. Some believed opal could reveal truth. Others believed it sharpened sight, while even more people thought it made the wearer of the opal invisible if wrapped in a fresh bay leaf. Yes, even gemstones get bizarre fan fiction. We'll circle back to the whole invisibility thing a little bit later. In Arabic legend, some believed opals fell from the heavens in flashes of lightning. Honestly, that one feels understandable, because opal really does look like frozen lightning. One of the most famous stories about opal comes from way back when, in ancient Rome, and it tells you everything about how valuable this gemstone once was. A Roman senator named Nonius owned an extraordinary opal, so magnificent that it became the envy of the powerful general Mark Antony. Antony wanted that stone, and some accounts say he intended to gift it to Cleopatra, whose obsession with gems has been brought up in 3 episodes in a row. Okay, this girl loved her jewels, and I'm officially thinking that I should rethink the name of this podcast to Cleopatra, the original crystal girl. Anyway, there's one problem with Antony getting the opal. Nonius refused to surrender it, and refusing a man like Mark Antony was dangerous. Rather than hand over the gem, Nonius chose something almost unthinkable. He fled Rome into exile, taking only his opal with him. He gave up wealth, position, comfort, and homeland for a stone. Roman writer Pliny the Elder later retold this story as proof of opal's extraordinary prestige. To Romans, this is not just jewelry. It was beauty worth sacrificing everything for. And I guess, who doesn't love a man with a little drama to him, right? Whether every detail survived history perfectly or not, the meaning is clear. There was once a gemstone so mesmerizing, a man chose banishment rather than lose it. And that gemstone was opal. So now we reach one of the strangest reputation collapses in gem history. Because for centuries, opal was admired. Then, in the 19th century, its image changed dramatically. One major reason was literature. In 1829, Sir Walter Scott published the novel Anne of Geierstein. In the novel, there is a noblewoman named Lady Hermione who possesses a mysterious opal in her hair. She wears it as a little pin, and the stone changes color with her mood and health, appearing bright when she is well and dull when danger approaches. Then comes the dramatic moment. A drop of holy water touches the opal, and it loses its brilliance. Soon, tragedy followed. Lady Hermione dies not long after, and so the readers of that time began linking opal with misfortune, fading beauty, illness, doom, supernatural instability. And today that might sound silly, but fiction, especially from a well-known writer like Sir Walter Scott, always influences culture. So why don't we list off some examples of other fiction influencing culture to really drive this point in? Remember after the 1986 film Top Gun? Well, the U.S. Navy recruitment surged. Harry Potter increased owl demand, and the release of Jaws in 1979 reshaped how people viewed an animal into a monster. So the novel Anne of Geierstein, it was wildly popular, and suddenly many readers began repeating the idea that opal brought bad luck. Jewelers quickly noticed sales dropping. Then superstition layered on superstition. Some said that opal should only be worn by those born in October. Some said, never accept one as a gift. Some says it caused illness. Some said it broke marriages. None of this had any evidence. I especially like the October one. I think that's very specific, very niche. But myths rarely need evidence, right? They need repetition. And the opal is what paid the price. Then came one of the greatest gemstone turnarounds in history. We gotta love a comeback kid. Australia. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, major opal discoveries in Australia transformed the global supply. Lightning Ridge, Coober Pedy, Andamuka, White Cliffs, these are places that would become legendary. Australia didn't just find opal, it found extraordinary opal. Black opal, boulder opal, crystal opal, fiery stones with colors so vivid they seemed electric. Especially black opal, whose dark body tone makes colors explode dramatically. It can look like neon trapped in midnight. Australia eventually became the dominant source of precious opal in the world, and with that came a new identity. No longer cursed, now iconic. Today, opal is deeply tied to Australian national identity. Long before modern gem labs explained diffraction and silica spheres, some Aboriginal stories tell of a creator spirit descending on a rainbow. Where that light touched the ground, dull stones burst into living color. These stones became opal. A stone once feared elsewhere was celebrated there. That is a remarkable cultural reversal, if you ask me. So let's talk about some of the varieties of opal. There's black opal, which usually is found in Lightning Ridge, which is a small remote town in New South Wales, Australia. And it got its name after a shepherd, his dog, and sheep were all found dead there in the 1800s after a lightning strike. And the ridge where it happened became known as Lightning Ridge. So there's some weird stories for you. This ridge is also known to hide the most valuable type of opal that's even out there. Black opal, which in its dark body color has intense flashes. Some stones literally look like galaxies trapped in the palm of your hand. There's also white opal, which has a light body tone with softer pastel play of color. It's dreamy, luminous, and classic. Next is boulder opal, and she forms within ironstone host rock. It literally looks like the opal is encased in another rock, and while the outer rock is cracking from the pressure of the gem that it holds, the opal inside seems to glow through the cracks with intensity. It gives rugged and artistic. Next is crystal opal, and that's transparent to translucent with vivid internal fire. It can seem like color floating in clear jelly. Fire opal is fighting to be my favorite, if I'm going to be honest. It's often orange, yellow, or red body color, is especially associated with volcanic regions in Mexico, where silica-rich water formed opal in cavities and rock seams. Some have play of color, some do not, but they can all look like bottled sunsets. Certain gems inspire collectors. Opal has inspired hunters because each stone is unique, so there's no perfect master template. No two patterns repeat exactly, and collectors chase lots of different looks. I'm going to describe some of the opal patterns now with a little description for any of our visual learners out there. There is the harlequin patterns, and these look like tiny blocks or tiles of color arranged like a checkerboard or mosaic. This is one of the rarest and most prized patterns. Think stained glass windows inside a stone. Next, there's the rolling flash. This is large waves of color that move across the stone when you tilt it. So think northern lights sliding across the sky. Okay, that brings us to the broad flash. These are big, bold chunks of color that light up all at once. So think about someone turning on neon lights inside the gem. Next is pinfire. Lots of tiny little sparkles scattered across the stone. Here you can think of glitter or stars sprinkled everywhere. That brings us to red dominance, and that appears when strong red flashes are the main color. This matters because red is one of the rarest and most valuable opal colors. Think about finding the hardest Pokemon card, okay? This is very difficult and hard to find. But the next is actually called rare. It's the rare directional color play. This stone only explodes with color from certain angles. Turn it one way, nothing. Turn it the other, fireworks. So you can almost imagine a secret image that only appears when the light hits it just right. Lastly, there's perfect brightness. This is extremely intense color that looks electric, even in poor lighting. I want you to think of the gem glowing, even when it shouldn't be. Wow, thanks for hanging in there with me. There are so many unique and desired qualities to this one gem. Some miners spend years chasing one extraordinary stone, and there's cutters who ruin fortunes with one wrong slice. There's some buyers that stare at an opal for hours under changing light. And unlike diamond, where many qualities are standardized, opal can feel emotional. Two people may value completely different stones. One loves chaos, one loves symmetry, one loves red fire, and one loves blue calm. It's a gemstone that invites personality. And across the globe, cultures have given us the stone a diverse list of qualities, since opal has been tracked back in time. A traditional Middle Eastern legend said opals fell from the heavens during thunderstorms and captured lightning inside of them. In some traditions, opal was given as a symbol of devotion because it contained many colors, representing many emotions held in one heart. I just think that is the cutest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. In some medieval stories, opal was believed to grant invisibility if wrapped in a fresh bay leaf and carried on the body. We mentioned this earlier in the episode, and I hope that this struck a little bit of a question in you, because when I first read that, I immediately thought of the Harry Potter invisibility cloak, and if this stone has the power to allow me to completely disappear, I was about to run out and grab some. I'm obsessed with that idea. But it turns out invisibility is not being referenced in the modern sci-fi sense of vanishing like glass, like under Harry Potter's invisibility cloak, because that's clearly what I was picturing. Anyways, one of Opal's great heartbreaks is fragility. Because it contains water and has a huge, unique internal structure, some opals can craze. That means develop cracking networks from dehydration, stress, temperature shock, or instability. This can often frustrate owners. Why must something so beautiful be so vulnerable? And perhaps it's just part of its identity. Opal is less like diamond, more like flame. It asks for care, not conquest. Today, opal has largely escaped its bad luck era. It is October's birthstone. It symbolizes imagination, emotion, creativity, and transformation. Artists love it. Collectors revere it. Designers use it when they want jewelry to feel alive. And many modern people are drawn to opal precisely because it resists standardization. It doesn't look generic. It doesn't look predictable. It looks personable. And let's break down what opal truly is. So, rainwater moves through earth. Silica dissolves. Silica is glass, by the way. It's literally mineralized glass. So, rainwater moves through the earth, and silica, or little glass particles, dissolve. Water then enters the cracks in between the silica. The water then leaves the cracks in between silica. And tiny little spheres, the little droplets where that water used to be, those tiny little spheres remained. So that when light arrives into that little crevice, colors appear. This is not magic, but it sure feels like it. Few gems blur that line so elegantly. Opal is a gemstone made of water and light, a jewel once praised by emperors, cursed by rumor, redeemed by discovery, a stone with no crystal order, yet endless visual wonder, a gem that reminds us nature does not need to follow the usual rules to create something extraordinary. And maybe that's a lesson that we take away. You don't always have to follow the rules to become the most interesting version of yourself. Blur the lines, get out of your comfort zone, push past the standardization that everyone is following. And sometimes that can lead you to a version of yourself that becomes even more interesting in the world around you than if you were to just stick to the structure that everyone else follows. And maybe that's why people love opal so much, because opal does what many of us hope to do ourselves. It takes tiny little pieces of chaos and arranges them into beauty in its own way. Well, that concludes today's story. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next week on Stone Stories.